We're wrapping up our summer series with this episode, I guess you would call it. And we're covering our third Unitarian Universalist principle, specifically acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. And I'd like to share excerpts from these words written by Robert Hardy's. He says that the world is basically filled with contradictions, and he's not wrong. And he writes that learning to love contradiction is no small thing. It amounts to a fundamental spiritual imperative for our time. We live in a crazy quilt world that is at once becoming smaller, more complex, and more polarized. This world presents us with contradictions at all levels, within our own souls, in our communities, and in our world. Making sense of this craziness is a religious task. Religion is the faculty through which we try to make sense of the world and our place in it. But these days, religion seems to be more of a problem than a solution. What kind of spirituality can help us live with integrity in the midst of the ambiguities, complexities, and disparities of our contemporary world? What kind of faith can sustain our love and care for such a world? When people ask me what goes on in a Unitarian Universalist church, and depending on their background, have some very interesting and erroneous ideas as to what we do. I tell them that we are a church that is open to spiritual truths found in the world religions. We're open to reason and science, and we're open to changing our minds. We're open to learning new things and integrating that into our rational and spiritual lives. It can be mind-blowing to people who have a more traditional background or sense of church to know or to hear that in my congregation there are people I would consider fairly mainstream Christians, people who have a Buddhist perspective, at least one or two that have kind of a Taoist orientation, some atheists, some agnostics, people like me. I think there are several people like me who I learned a new word, omniist or omniism. And that basically is someone who does not subscribe to any one religion, but subscribes to the idea that there are truths to be found in all the world's religions to some extent. We don't hold to just one. We're open to, what they all have to teach. And so the question I am often asked, if people are still with me at this point in the conversation, is how the heck does that work? How does it work when you don't have a common creed or a common belief system? In a way, the closest thing we have to that are these 7 principles and 6 sources that I've been covering this summer. But even those are guidelines. They're not really like hard rules. We don't really have those. We are open to many different ways of thinking, and we don't all agree. And there's a saying in our denomination that we don't need to think alike in order to love alike. You can serve humanity whether you are doing it through the lens of Christianity or Buddhism or humanism or atheism. You can still come together and help others and do good in the world. So what we try to do, and it actually works a lot better than most people would think. It flows better. It just kind of works. We don't insist on a particular adherence to a set of beliefs, but we do encourage one another and support one another in their individual truth-seeking, in their individual spiritual exploration and discovery. And it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone to have a church or a society or a denomination, whatever you want to call it, that hands you the reins and says, you guide your team of horses, as it were, and find the answers. We can support you. We can share our experience on our rides while we hold the reins, but no one in a Unitarian Universalist church is going to tell you what to think or what to believe. And in some ways, that is a weakness because we don't require anything specific, but it's also a great strength because we are open and accepting to just about anyone who wants to, explore their spirituality. And we are there to support them. And so, even though the world is contradictory, polarized more than ever these days, it seems, there's still a way through that. There's still a way to go on, even with the back and forth and the inconsistencies. I'm just speaking for myself, but I would not consider myself an atheist, despite all the horrible things that go on in the world. But if you were to ask me my specific ideas as to the nature of God, I'm very conflicted. Sometimes I think God personally intervenes. Sometimes I think God is more of the deist model of Enlightenment thinkers, the image of the celestial clockmaker that created the very complex gears of the clock and wound it up and just kind of let it go and did not take any further action within it, just kind of watches it. Sometimes I'm a pantheist, believing, God is more the underlying fabric of nature, that God exists in nature. And sometimes I believe in what is called process theology. In fact, my own personal theology is moving toward that, which is that God is the creator, and God is both the creator and part of the creation. And as the creation unfolds and manifests and grows and broadens, so does God through all living things experiences, through the expansion of the universe, all of those things. God is with us, and God is in process with us. Now, any one or none of those could be accurate, but that's my spiritual quest. That's my spiritual path, and yours may be similar, yours may be very different. You may be very settled on where you are and comfortable with that, and that's great. Or you may be, continuing on, as it were, and that's also fine. We encourage one another, and we understand that in some ways we're stronger together than individually. But as with most things in life, people can encourage you, mentor you, support you, love you, but there are certain aspects of life that you must go through ultimately by yourself. And, we're here for that too. So I think that's a good principle to end on, because in a couple of weeks we are going to try coming out, at least partially, the other side of this pandemic that the world finds itself in. And we're going to try to do in-person services again. And stay tuned to this YouTube channel. I'm hoping to put something out that will kind of give you a sense of what church will look like, at least in the short term. But anyway, I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank our music director, Mark Bunce, for his wonderful music and his creative input. This would not have been possible without his collaboration, and I'm very thankful for that. And so there it is, the 7 principles and 6 sources of Unitarian Universalism in no particular order. like to close with this benediction, words by Jean Rickard Rowe. We have a calling in this world. We are called to honor diversity, to respect differences with dignity, and to challenge those who would forbid it. We are people of a wide path. Let us be wide in affection and go our way in peace.